for him, and then also the angle of the sidewalk in relation to the driveway. And I heard one person say that as well.
The sidewalks are installed relatively flat all the way through the driveway. We match in to the driveway, so there shouldn't be a bump or anything that needs to be adjusted. We match into the existing, so what's there. So I guess there shouldn't be any problems. Seems like I'm missing a question, but
I'll leave that open for council to pursue further. Mrs. Fox asked the question, what was driving this? Is there some money behind it to be pushing this, or?
There's no federal dollars associated with this project. As we mentioned earlier, the need for sidewalks and connectivity is born out of city policy that resulted from past litigation. So these are city dollars that are paying for this project.
There was a question about the seeding and the quality of the soil and the quality of the seeds on the reconstructed, replaced land. Comparison was made to 10th Avenue. Any comments on this?
the goal is to the contractor is responsible for seeding along the route, and anything that's disturbed would be reseeded. Once the project is done, then the landowners would have to water the seeding and have it take hold until it takes hold, I guess. So that's how we typically handle the seeding in our projects.
Okay. And again, I'm asking the questions that were asked by the opponents, and then if council wants to pursue some of these, I will allow that. There was a question, City Manager?
I do believe with 10th Avenue, we had the contractor come back at least once and reseed, if not twice. That happened right as I got here. But then it does become the property owner's responsibility.
Thank you. Questions about sprinkler systems? Will they have to be removed, and if so, who's paying for that? And I guess how does that work with the rest of the sprinkler system in that yard?
We sent out a letter to the folks along the route asking for their contact information, and then if there's any information that they have as far as existing sprinklers, we would like to know that so that the contractor can work around them. If there's any damage done to the sprinklers, they will be repaired as part of the project.
Okay. Landscaping question from Mrs. Kessler. Will the landscaping have to, is it same as sprinkler system? Does it have to be removed? And
generally speaking, if it's existing, we'll plan on replacing it after construction goes through. Don't know exactly where the landscaping is, but if that's where the sidewalk goes, then we just match into their existing landscaping.
okay. If the landowner has to pay for it and it's on their taxes, will they also be paying interest? Is there any interest?
The assessment is 10% over 10 years. So yes, there is an interest. They also have the option to pay prior to the assessment roll, which then the interest wouldn't be part of that.
Okay. For all the people who testified, I apologize if I missed a question. I think I got most of them, most all of them. So I just want to make sure that your questions were asked and in a manner that we can answer them. So with that said, City Manager? Oh, yep. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a question about eminent domain. The planned sidewalks are all on city-owned right-of-way, platted city right-of-way. So there is no need to acquire private property for it.
Okay. I will close the public hearing. Have I done that? I don't think so. I'll close the public hearing, and the chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. I just want to make everything clear that even if you make the motion and second it, it doesn't mean that you're automatically in favor of it. It just means that we have to do this in order to even debate it. So chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Schutte. Let's open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Peters.
Yeah, I got several here. Well, let me just run down the list. I'm going to apologize if I bounce around a little bit. So I think
Leeway granted.
City Manager Mack might have addressed this, but help me understand why this street, what's the priority? How do we pick 12th Avenue? You know, maybe set the table that way, because I think people are kind of wondering, well, why this street? It's not a through street like 10th Street is. Why is this one up for discussion?
Sure.
Let's start there.
That's a great question. I may not be able to answer it as eloquently as our city engineer or our public works director. But the short answer is that the city has adopted a pavement management program which grades all of our streets, and this one has risen to the top at this point for reconstruction.
Okay, if I could follow up on that, why does it rise to the top?
Well, it's based on pavement condition. Our city engineer can give you more detail on that.
There's 12th Avenue, this section of 12th Avenue has been on, it's been on our radar for reconstruct for several years. Basically since I've gotten here, I've heard about this street that needs to be redone. And ultimately, this project is also in conjunction with WMU. They also have a water main project, so it made a lot of sense if they're replacing the water main and we need to redo the street, that we do them at the same time.
Okay, I'm just gonna keep going here. So, and I'm not a real estate agent, so this might be, maybe nobody can answer this, but when folks are buying properties, is there a notice if there's not a sidewalk saying in the future, you may be responsible for putting in a sidewalk here? Is there any kind of notice before they're planting trees? Because I'm assuming, like most people, they think that property is theirs, and it's not, in theory, even though they maintain it. Is there some consideration that says, hey, just so you know, there's no sidewalk here, you might have to be financially responsible for it?
You know, I can't speak to that on the real estate side, but when you do purchase property, it would have any platted right-of-way or easements should be on your deed, which would show where city right-of-way is at.
Okay. Okay, so a couple more here. Bear with me. So this reference the 2021 master plan, is that right? What was we were relatively new to town then, so what was the purpose behind that master plan in terms of how, was there public input that we want more sidewalks, we want more accessibility? How was that?
The master plan is related to all transportation. So again, that was before my time here, but I believe the council wanted some type of plan for how we are addressing transportation needs in the community. I couldn't tell you who put that study together. We could find that information, but it has guided our policies and procedures for how we handle not just road construction or sidewalk construction, but where we have traffic signals, where we have turn lanes, where we make changes related to traffic patterns and traffic flow. So there is a small portion of the transportation master plan that specifically addresses sidewalks. The sidewalk accessibility plan was adopted in '07. That's a separate document from that.
Okay. So we talked a little bit, City Manager Mack, before the council meeting about a method of where they put in the sidewalks. You consulted with the Public Works Director on how they put in these sidewalks and not actually tear the trees out. They essentially cut through the roots, for lack of a better explanation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So this happened on 10th Avenue. It's happened in other communities I've been in as well. I think there are 21 trees that are slated for removal if during the design of the sidewalk process, it's determined that, the roots are within a certain space from where the sidewalk is going. They can participate in a practice called root grinding and maintain the tree.
Okay.
And I do believe that happened I couldn't tell you how many on 10th Avenue, but it did occur.
So it was mentioned, I think by you, Justin, that if a tree is killed in the process, that the contractor is at the city that would be replacing the tree. I guess what's the tree warranty? How long is that for?
Well, generally, we look at it for a year. If the tree can survive that first freeze thaw, it's generally going to do okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just also for some additional information, any trees that are removed, we do replace them with new trees in the boulevard.
Open it up for further questions, comments. Councilman Danforth. And leeway granted, just go ahead.
First of all, I think a point of clarification, Mr. Peters, in regards to, are the homeowners, when they buy a lot or a home, are they aware? I think our ordinance dictate or suggest that we have the right to do that if it's deemed necessary and needed, and I think that's probably the answer to that question. But I'm a little confused on what I've heard out of the public and with yourself in regards to, I thought I heard earlier with the public's comments that the sidewalks were going to be right up against the curbs, and then, Justin, you said there's going to be boulevards. Which is it? Is it a mix? What is it?
There's going to be a boulevard all along between the curb and the sidewalk. It will vary a little bit, but it'll be roughly 4 foot of space.
12 foot?
4 foot.
4 foot.
4 foot.
And 4 foot of boulevard?
It's roughly, it varies along the route, but it's roughly.
So
It's-
that's taking our land back.
It's up to Councilman Danforth if he wants to let you piggyback on his question, but.
I'll
otherwise-
allow him, but I
yeah.
want him to note this in the future.
I appreciate your generosity. So you said 4 feet of boulevard? Is that, okay, sorry, go ahead. You can answer that.
Yeah.
It's 4 feet. Okay, so is this standard measurements? I guess, is this a cookie cutter approach where when we're putting in new sidewalks, it's this distance, this is the setback, this is what we're doing? Or does each neighborhood have its own set of rules that they abide by?
It's not really by neighborhood. It's based off of what the city has for right-of-way.
Okay. And we believe that we have enough right-of-way for a 4-foot boulevard plus the sidewalk.
Go ahead,
On
Justin.
both sides.
Yep.
5 feet.
I'm just going to have to ask the people in the audience, you just got to be quiet. Please just respect the process.
Yeah, like I said, it'll vary. Some are a little less than 4 foot, but at some places it could be 4 foot, yeah.
Okay.
4 foot is our typical boulevard width or greater.
Councilman Danforth, you're done, Councilman Peters? Okay, thank you, Councilman Danforth.
Didn't know you were going to hog my time, but that's,
And count it against you.
I know, Ms. Mack, that you said that this has resulted from a 2007, I'm not sure the term you used, litigation plan or something, but that was about the ADA compliancy on the corners, correct, that whole issue?
It was, I'm still working on details of that because no one on staff was here when that happened. I reached out to First District because they helped facilitate the 2007 plan. So yes, it was related to the corners and connectivity. But the details beyond that, I don't have them.
Yeah, my very, very faint memory is that it really dealt with the corners themselves, but I could be wrong there. So and I don't expect you to know this, but it's somewhat rhetorical, but in our experience here, since 2007, when we've had projects like this, have we been 100% in compliance with placing sidewalks in where they don't exist?
I couldn't answer that for you. I know that we have had, let me look it up here, assessment projects. So there was 10th Avenue, sorry, I have to get through my notes. 10th Avenue Northwest, 3rd Avenue Northwest are the most recent sidewalk assessments.
Okay, and was the 10th Avenue sidewalks on both sides, or was it on one side?
It was on one side because there was not enough right-of-way on the other side to meet compliance for the width of the sidewalk.
You know, part of what we're doing here is we're paying for poor planning and sins that have been made over many, many, many decades. And so now we've got areas of town that, and even looking in this area where we have some sidewalks, but majority of this area doesn't have sidewalks. And I know that's the difficult part. I look at it, and to me, it's somewhat of a neighborhood thing. If the neighbors don't seem to see a big need for it, other than if there's some other type requirement, you know, federal or whatever, you know, I lean in that direction. But it also seems, you know, I look at this, I go, why this spot? Just because we have a policy that I am pretty positive we have not fully enforced since 2007. Why this one? Why? Then the next question is why both sides of the road if one side can meet the same need? Now, obviously, it forces somebody across the street, but I'm having a hard time with this one. I'd love to see him in there, and I think everybody here would love to see him in there if it worked, and we all got different issues. But number one, it's a lot of money. These are fairly big lots. It's a large area. It's a really, really well-established area in regards to their homes and their facilities, buildings on their homes, their driveways, their trees, whatever, their landscaping. So it's a big disruption in that area. And I'm struggling with the need for sidewalks in this area. I'd love to see them, but I'm struggling based on all of the issues and concerns in approving this myself, so.
Would anyone like to speak before Councilman Peters speaks a second time? Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things, and this is for Councilman Peters, by the way. That we have what we call a waiver of right to protest, and we put that against certain properties when they develop. And that says that we have the right to you have the right to waiver protest, so at some point when the city deems it's a proper time, then sidewalks have to go in. We do it for different things, just an FYI for you there. But I got a couple of questions, and one of them is in the tree removal. You said 21 trees, I believe is the number. Mm-hmm. Of those 21 trees, how many of those would be ash trees? Do we know that, Justin? No?
I don't know that answer.
Okay, that would be good to know. And then I think there is, you know, somebody had a concern and brought up the idea of, or why we did one sidewalk on 12th, or on 10th. And I think the reason mainly for that was, I believe, because the houses, the proximity was so close that you could barely park one car in the driveway. I think that was why we chose one side to do that. The other question I have is, and Justin, you and I spoke about this afternoon, and that is the 5-foot width. And I believe that's an ADA issue that requires, because a lot of most of the sidewalks in town were 4 feet, but we've adopted that width over the last several years. And there was some discussion about bump outs, and I'd liken that to like a little rest area at certain intervals. Apparently, this is acceptable by ADA to allow somebody to pass, you know, somebody in a wheelchair with a walker, whatever the case may be. that certainly I would think would help a little bit with the space, if we could do that. And I don't know what the interval requirements would be for that, but that's a question I have too, as we move forward. Thank you.
I did just want to note that there was one person who testified who commented upon being able to park the car in the driveway without blocking the sidewalk. I forgot to ask that one, so, Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I guess I might have a longer list than Councilman Danforth sometimes, so.
No way.
So, first question, I guess, would be, do we as a city go to each property affected on this in person to determine all these factors? I mean, do we actually look at, the reason I ask this question is, for example, I'm not as knowledgeable on the engineering side of it, but I went for a little drive before the meeting and happened to bump into Councilman Bueller at the same time. He was out driving your neighborhood. And so as I'm looking at it, I'm observing some of these concerns. I'm questioning even the 4-foot thing, but on some of the properties there. But do we, first off, I guess, do we go out to each one? Do we do it, based off of, this kind of a view right here from, or do we actually go to the properties to look over each one? I guess that's my first question.
Well, it's kind of a combination. We, this is a aerial view that we take a look at, and then we also go out there and survey it and drive it just like you guys do. So it's a combination of all those things.
All right, thank you. Because the reason I ask is, for example, I have one question here, is the driveway slope, and there's one property, I don't remember the address, but it's on the north side of the road, and if you were to add 4 feet and then a sidewalk, with the driveway and then the slope it had down going to the road, that's going to affect that even more so. From what I could, especially if the driveway is going to, or I mean, the sidewalk is typically level with, or really close to the elevation of the curb and gutter, I believe. And so if that's the case, and you push that 4 foot into the property, I guess maybe that's one of those, it's gonna be a little less boulevard possibly, but whatever distance it is, and you have that sidewalk, that's gonna be into their driveway from what they're used to, and it's gonna shorten up where they can park, 'cause it's gonna have to, that slope will be further into the driveway. So I absolutely understand some concerns. I got a feeling that if I was not sitting here, looking at it because I understand consistency and everything, I would probably be having these same concerns myself if I lived there. So that's one observation. I guess I don't necessarily need a response. I just noticed that the length of the driveway is going to be affected, where it's going to have to slope down, it would appear. There's just I had another note here, but it's been talked about only on one side. Just wonder how much we've looked into that, just having sidewalks on one side versus both sides. So just curious if that's how much we put thought into that particular portion of it. Let's see here. Tree life, I guess you did touch on that. You mentioned that, I guess, if it does make it the first year, because I was wondering, how do we know if, 2 years later? But is there an industry standard? I guess it was answered. If that's what it is, if it makes it the first year. Yeah, that was one of my questions, I believe. ADA accessibility. So having sidewalks in the neighborhood, I'm for having more sidewalks in the neighborhood. That was asked when we were having our first debate, when I was running for council the first time, and sidewalks was brought up. And I mean, sidewalks, the neighborhood I live in has sidewalks, and I can see people using them because the sidewalks are there, and I can see the benefit of it. So, but I also understand when you're used to not having sidewalks, I absolutely can understand that perspective. But I do believe sidewalks will help in many ways. But again, the wisdom in here, how do we do this in a neighborhood that's, like I say, as Councilman Danforth said, just how we did developments in the past. Now we got to try to navigate through that whole process. So I do see the advantage, because it was brought up about the sidewalks not being used much, or a couple areas. They probably will be used more once there's sidewalks put in. I mean, my neighborhood, people are using the sidewalks. They're not walking in the middle of the street. It's because the sidewalk's there. So they're going to be used. I mean, that's why you put sidewalks in a city. So we're not, in the middle of the street. So I do see the advantage of sidewalks. I don't want to minimize the value of that. But also, you know, the sidewalk, it was brought up, and I don't know if this was answered, sidewalk dip. Is there gonna be dips but isn't the sidewalk, there isn't, it's just gonna be level with the road. I don't believe there is gonna be a dip going up and down with sidewalks. It was mentioned, I wrote it down, but I think, aren't they gonna be just level with the curb and gutter? Would that be correct?
Yeah, the way the sidewalks are, they're usually just a little bit higher than the curb,
Little
so
bit
that
higher than the
everything
curb and
slopes to the road.
Okay. One question here on the damaged sprinklers, or removal, it mentioned here. What's the difference? If something, you mentioned damaged sprinklers, they would potentially be a cost, you know, that'd be taken care of. But what about the removal of sprinklers and having to reroute? Does that covered as well by the city, the contract on this process, or the damage was mentioned, but what about the removal?
If there needed to be removal, then we, as part of the fix of the sprinkler system, it end up being the end product would be it end up being operable sprinkler system.
And that'd be at the cost of the city on this.
The city on
process
this
here, not
project.
the
If we have
homeowner.
to move it, then
They have
it'd
to
be the
move it.
city.
Okay. Yeah, I guess personally, I still have, okay, consistency. I can see as a city, again, doing this now for 2.5 years, I understand why we're doing this. It makes sense. Having consistency, trying to, getting sidewalks once we do something like this, put sidewalks in neighborhoods. I'm all for sidewalks. I also, though, understand it really will affect, even if it affects just a couple property owners in a really odd way, with driveways and stuff. I mean, that's why I'm not quite there yet as far as seeing, and maybe it's just because I haven't, I've asked some questions tonight. That's why part of me is wondering to mention deferring this for 2 weeks. I've just been processing this. If we were to defer it for 2 weeks to kind of talk about it more instead of trying to just make a decision tonight like this. But I guess I will let that up to other seasoned council members if they agree. I'll concede at that.
And I was going to ask City Manager Mack to explain to us what the process is, because I want to make sure that everyone understands what happens if this vote goes through tonight, or if it doesn't, what the impact would be if we deferred it for a time. But if, with the council's indulgence, I would like to ask City Manager Mack that question now.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually will have our finance officer speak to the assessment process, but did want to make clear that because this is a public hearing, if you're going to defer action to a future date, you need to defer the public hearing. So you need to have another public hearing, which could be 2 weeks from now, but depending on publication, I'm not entirely for sure. The action tonight notifies the adjacent property owners that the city will be engaging in an assessment project. The actual assessment action will come later after bids are awarded and final costs are established. Kristen, you can fill in what I may have missed.
No, that's pretty much it. So the necessity is the first process of any special assessment. So if the council would not pass this resolution, then once the project is completed, we couldn't come back then and assess at that stage. So this is just to kind of go through the formal process. As the manager stated, we do this, we go through construction. Normally about September is when we'll do the actual assessment roll. It'll go by homeowner and the amount that property owner will be assessed. That is their opportunity then to pay in full. If they don't choose to pay in full within the 30-day window, it goes on their tax roll for 10 years. And the interest rate is established by the council, and the standard has been 10%. So, if any other questions, I can try to help. Thank you.
All right. I know Councilman Peters wants to speak. Councilman Jurens or Councilman Tupper, you haven't spoken, so you have the right to speak first. Councilman Tupper?
Is this tied to any, I think somebody had a question before, any water main or wastewater? Not wastewater, street, stormwater, thank you.
Not this project specifically, no.
Will there be any stormwater replay, or any, being we're putting in new curb and gutter, will there be any replaced in?
There was not a lot of utility work other than water main on this project.
So in a water main, will they be tying into residents with that water main?
That would be a WMU question. I believe they are.
I believe they are. And what do they do with that? Do they, WMU, do they charge each individual when they tie in a new water main? Maybe you can't answer that. I believe they do, but I can't say that for a fact.
Yeah, Councilman Danforth, if you can
If it's
answer
a
that.
replacement repair like this, they do not, because they've already paid for it originally. So unless there was a breakage from the shut-off on the main to the house, that's the responsibility of the landowner, property owner. But in this case, where they're going in and replacing that, the utilities will, at their expense, they do the reconnect.
Okay, so it's trying to get me a total picture of what the cost is going to be to the homeowners when I'm asking those questions. So when I look at it, you know, we've tried to have some continuity. Does anybody have any idea what the assessment was, average per property on 10th Avenue?
We can get it for you. No, not off the top of our head.
And when we put that on one side, it was just assessed to the people on the one side, right? I don't know how many times I've had people ask me where they put in an ADA accessible curb cut where there was no sidewalk. How stupid are you guys? You know, because there is no sidewalk there. Well, that's part of the federal law that we have to put that in. With the long-term plan, when we back in 2007, when we put this in place, I think it was for the betterment of the whole community. Where, in my problem with this is where do we pick and choose what we're going to do? You know, I know 10th Avenue, I wasn't on the council at that time, and how they came up with the one side and not the other. I know there was a lot of discussion in that because I did follow it some. God, if we just say we're not going to do it here, we might as well just take it off the books and not have any sidewalks other than in new developments. Because we're going to run into the same thing in every street improvement project we do. And to Councilman Peters, when they did the pavement management system, I believe that was, when they first started that was about 8 years ago or so. And what that was is done by a company that grades every inch of road we got in town, and they kind of put together a master plan of, you know, what needs to be done in different tiers of repairs. So it's worked out very great for the city. So I just really struggling, and I feel sorry for everybody that's in this room, but where do we draw the line of what do we do and what don't we do? I think, you know, I'm not a real estate agent, but I think if I was going to buy a house that has a sidewalk, the value would be a little bit more. But maybe not. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe you got less boulevard, so maybe it does go the other way. But I just really struggle with not following our procedures. Procedures were put in place for a reason, and you know, we just can't pick and choose which neighborhoods we're going to use the procedures on. So, thank you.
City Manager Mack wanted to say something.
Thank you, Mayor. There was a question asked, I believe, by a member of the public, and I think Councilman Shetty discussed driveway slopes. So we did run into this issue on the 3rd Avenue project. We do go work with the individual property owners if the slope is going to exceed the 15% criteria that's in the engineering design standards. So it's not necessarily a one and done. We do recognize that there are individual impacts. Additionally, as it relates to 10th, we would have been creating a hardship by installing sidewalk on the south side. Typically, you would install on both sides of a reconstruct or a new road, as long as you're not creating a hardship like those properties being as close to the property line as they were. So that's the rationale for the recommendation to do both sides. Again, it aligns with the transportation master plan, but also addresses the community's connectivity issues. And just a point of information that should the council decide not to include the sidewalks in this project, we still are obligated by federal law to install the ADA accessible ramps.
They're nowhere.
Councilman Jurgens, did you have comments, questions?
I'm going to be quick. I think we're getting a little wore out, me included. This will affect not only the 2 or 3 or 4 that are real close to 12th Avenue, but it's going to affect a lot of people, not just in the cost, just in blowing snow. Every doggone time we get an inch or 2 of snow or more all winter long. I've always been felt lucky not to have to do this on those little sidewalks all the way around our homes and our lots. That being said, per city ordinance and in their signatures, real quick question. Sidewalks are required only for new construction, true?
They are.
They are part of the requirements for new development, yes.
So sidewalks are not required here, only the ADA?
Per city ordinance related to subdivision regulations, yes, sidewalks are required for new construction. City, well, I don't know if it's ordinance, but city policy, which is adopted by this body, states that infill sidewalks are a requirement for reconstruction projects.
Okay, new construction or reconstruction, where are we at on this?
They're in different parts of the rules. So new construction is in the subdivision regulations. This is a different policy that the council has adopted. It's not in ordinance. It's
Okay.
a resolution that was passed by the council.
Okay. And if we agree or disagree with that, just say we agree with that, can we have sidewalks on one side of the street like we did on 10th?
I'm not, can you clarify what you mean by agree or disagree? A policy was adopted by the council, which means it is a regulation that at least staff are supposed to adhere to. And as it relates to 2 sides of the street or one, the recommendation is to do both sides, but it's up to the council to decide.
Okay, I can go back to our sidewalks required by ordinance, no, but it is, well, we'll, when we vote, we'll decide what we feel like on the language. That's all.
Councilman Peters?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple more questions for you, Justin, if you don't mind. What is the current width of the road right now? The current width of the road that's going to be narrowed, let's start there. How wide is that?
I believe this is, what's the measuring tool? I think it's 36 feet,
Okay. And what will it be narrowed to?
34.
Okay. So is the narrowing happening so we can shore up some more room to put in the boulevard and the sidewalk? Is that the theory behind it, or what would be the purpose of narrowing the road?
That came into play a little bit, but just the roadway didn't, trying to make a uniform section all the way through there, and so
Okay.
that was the goal.
Okay, so, and again, just to emphasize this one more time, so it's 4 feet for the boulevard, 5 feet for the sidewalk, for a total of 9 feet that will be taken out into construction, should I call it, is that right? Okay. So I guess to round my comments out, what I'm getting is, I'm gonna be a no on this. I just don't see this as a cookie cutter approach. I mean, I think that everybody would agree, or most people would agree, that sidewalks are a good thing. I don't think that this particular plan fits in this neighborhood. I'm looking at these aerials on my computer here, and I'm looking at them up there. And if I'm driving a pickup, and if I park on my driveway, that pickup's absolutely gonna be blocking the sidewalk, especially with what it's planned for right now. So I guess we don't have to lament on that too much. I want to thank, certainly the staff for their time, but I think what we need to do is take a look at not only the policy or the ordinance or whatever that is, and say, hey, we're in agreement that sidewalks are a necessity. Well, maybe I'd use that word loosely. They'd be nice. But we can't put a square peg in a round hole for every single neighborhood that we have. I just don't think that that's responsible. And, I think most people would agree that those dollars could be spent elsewhere. So that's where I'm at. I just want to round my comments out. Thank you.
City Manager Mack would like to ask a question.
A point of clarity, based off your comments, Councilman Peters, is the desire to not move forward with sidewalks at all, or the desire to not assess property owners for the sidewalks? Because those are two different things.
My desire is to, well, I don't know what you're asking. Can you repeat
Well,
that?
I guess my question is, so this project is out to bid. It includes the sidewalks as part of the bid project. The action we're asking tonight is if you support assessing the property owners for installation of the sidewalks. Not if you support the sidewalks. But if you don't support the sidewalks, then we probably have to do something related to the bid that's already out.
Yeah, I think what I'm getting at is I don't support the sidewalk plan for this particular development. So I guess to put it simply, it wouldn't make sense to assess the values if I don't believe in the plan.
I have two councilmen waiting, Councilman Danforth, Councilman Tupper. But I did have one question. Councilman Peters raised something. I just want to ask this so that the people in the room know what's happening. So let's say this goes down today and we vote this down. The road is still going to be narrowed in some areas, and then there will be fill brought in, and then there will be seed brought in as well, right? Okay, and that's not going to change whether there's sidewalks or not. Okay, I just want to make everyone clear that you might still, I can just say, it's like I've talked to a lot of people who live on 10th Avenue, and it's been a couple years. Finally, people are getting okay with it, but I'm just saying, I want everyone to know that this isn't, even if it's voted down and they might be happy about that, it doesn't change the fact that you might not be happy with an aspect of your yard. I'm just, because nothing can really change that. Sure.
Just following up on that, I have a vested interest in this. This is obviously my ward, but I think the policy needs to be looked at as far as how we approach these developments and reconstruction, if you will, because even if this wasn't in my area, I think it's still responsible to take a step back and look and say, does this actually make sense? So I think that we should probably bring that up for a bigger discussion so we don't run into this in the future. And so, to some extent, it's kind of on us as a council because this was in the budget. We knew that this was coming. But now that we actually dove into this on a case study basis, I think that we're finding out that it doesn't cookie cut fit every single neighborhood, and it's worth looking at. That's all I got.
Councilman Danforth.
Thank you. First a comment and then a couple questions. I know there's been comments made in regards to the seeding of the areas that are exposed and such. 10th Avenue and 19th Street are the two that really come to mind. I was in both of those cases, I was called out by people that live in those areas to take a look at what the work looked like afterwards. And I gotta be honest, it was really pathetic. The work that had been done, there were rocks everywhere in there. The dirt was horrible. It was just very poorly. There was garbage within that dirt. I don't know what our standard is or what our expectation is and how we define what's acceptable in that work. But right now, we kind of get people doing stuff that they don't know what they're doing, and so they just throw dirt and whatever it is in there, and they throw seed over the top. If we don't have a standard for that or expectation, then maybe we should be looking at that. So now a couple questions. Justin, have we done any kind of property by property by property assessment as to how many properties would be affected adversely in their ability to park their vehicles in their driveways and not cross the drive, or the sidewalks?
We have looked at that. I don't know the number. It wasn't a lot.
That doesn't help me.
I know.
Right. The second question I have is, when I look at this, and again, it can be distorted a little bit with your GIS system here, but when I go on and I look at this, there are what appears to be quite a number of properties that, assuming you're 9 feet, right, assuming your 5-foot sidewalk and your 4-foot boulevards, there's going to be sidewalk that's really close to some of these garages and buildings. Have we done any assessment on that?
I think these buildings are offset from the property lines. I don't know the number, but the sidewalk would sit within the right of way.
I understand that.
So the buildings, based off of our setbacks, they're far enough away from the road.
You're saying that that all the buildings are in compliance with the setbacks, and therefore we're not disturbing the setback with this project in any manner?
We're not changing the setbacks. Everything's in the right of way.
Okay, and there were no variances on any of these that now have buildings there?
I don't know
I
that.
think we should look and see if there really are any that are affected by that. I mean, because it looks like, if you take 9 feet away, some of these, that looks very close. And I don't know what those side yard setback, what are the side yards on that, 6 feet? I know that got changed way back when. I think it went from 6 feet to 9 feet or something like that, but I think in certain cases, it's 6 feet. So anyway, that's a point of concern that I would have as well. And I am, albeit that I'm upset with Councilman Peters for stealing my time, I'm in the same boat he is in regards to not being in favor of this. And I do strongly agree that we should look at, staff did their job on this thing. And if we have a policy in there that says this is what we should be doing, I don't believe it's in ordinance, I believe it's in policy. We should be looking at that. Because it's a guideline, it's not a requirement. If it's a requirement, then it should be an ordinance. And I appreciate the fact that you guys have all done this and got us to this point. This body is the one now that needs to look at it and say, does it make sense in this application? I don't believe it does, but I do believe that it warrants at least a review of what that policy is and how we go forward, and are there possibilities of cost share? There's different things that we could take a look at that I think that's at least worthy of us doing that. And maybe that is a work session type topic. So all I got.
City Manager Mack? Well, actually, okay, I'm just going to say to the council, if you have a question that might change your vote, then by all means ask it. But if it's just, I think we've vetted this very well, but I'm not going to stop anybody from asking further questions, because if you have something, by all means ask it. But if it's not going to change your vote, if you already have decided, then it might be time to shorten that. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Our current policy, I got to agree with, these things should be subjective to the council. Again, there's been some mention of cookie cutter. And I know there was a good reason for doing this. And if we do this, we're going to set a precedent for additional development down the road. I think the way to get around that, though, is to change our policy, to make it subjective to this council. Well, I think that's basically what Mike was saying, too. I think that's the direction we ought to go. I don't know, personally, I don't know that there's a lot of questions that I think we still need to answer, which at the least, I would say we need to probably put this off for a little while again. But right now, I'm leaning in the direction of not putting them in.
And I will say, Councilman Shetty did ask the possibility. He didn't make a motion, but Councilman Tupper?
I got to ask one question, and I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just going to pick an intersection here. Let's say at Karen Street and 12th in the northwest corner, and I were to tear that house down and build a brand new one. Would I be required to put in sidewalks at that time?
Yes.
So what's the difference? Because that's our policy, our ordinance. So now we're going to have 2 pieces of sidewalk to go to no place, correct? I think we're just opening up a can of worms that we're never going to be able to close again with this discussion. So, and I feel sorry for everybody that's in the speaking against this tonight and all the property owners. But if it's in policy, it's in policy for a reason. Should we address that policy someplace down the road? Maybe that's possible. But what we fail to do a lot of times is with ordinances or policies, either one, is to address what's in front of us today, what our policy is today. And a lot of times we don't address that. We do it with emotion. We're elected to uphold the policies and procedures and the ordinances. So I will be supporting this tonight.
Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm asking these questions because I have a bent a certain direction, and yet here's my questions here to kind of get some clarity, maybe for all of us. One, Councilman Danforth had asked earlier, and I don't know if we really got to. I mean, again, I appreciate the work we're doing as a city on this. Everyone's doing their job to potentially try to work this out, even to get to this point here at this juncture. But my question was, are there any hardships on these driveway accessibilities? And it sounds like there is some. I believe the one I've gathered we just didn't have the number per se. So so on 10th Avenue, was there a percentage? Right tonight we at least, maybe we can have this answer later this week. But tonight, to make this decision, we don't have that. I don't have that question answered. How many hardships there are on the one side versus the other, as far as for this driveway? It sounds like there will be some. So that's one that I guess I don't believe we've really dialed in here. If someone has an answer, that would be fine. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to my next question or thought here. ADA, then on the other side, ADA accessibility. If there's someone that moves into this neighborhood that really needs the accessibility to sidewalk, we got to have these sidewalks. It's our job as a city to provide the proper infrastructure. And so like I said earlier, I am for sidewalks being put in, but I also understand we have these challenges where it doesn't fit necessarily. So, or as far as which side of the road. And so that's the challenge here. But again, there's some people that, even if it's for one person that really needs this use, and it really is a difference of them going out and going down the street, going down a sidewalk or not out in their neighborhood, it's worth it for that one person. So there is that side of it as well. The cost share, that's something that we do as a city. It's consistent. I'm a fan of being consistent, so we do things consistency. So the cost share isn't anything we're asking new of anybody in this neighborhood. It's something we do, and every time we have these projects, it's just obviously there's sometimes we've had it where maybe we didn't see it potentially right to be on one side or the other side of the road, like on 10th. We've used that as an example. I had a gentleman from my ward that had the same thing pop up in his neighborhood and had sidewalks going on his side and the elevation of his driveway, and he had some legitimate concerns about the elevation of the driveway into his business. And it was hindsight, he wished he'd added the driveway further down. There was enough room to do that, but that's where it was. However, he didn't know if his trucks were going to bottom out, and again, good concerns, or the hitches and the trailers and everything. In the end, the guy doing the concrete work did it well, as far as able to get the elevation correct with water flow, because he's worried about water flow. So the professionals that are doing this work, we're believing that they're going to do it correctly, and so it did work out okay in his case. As far as the changes, though, because again, we're used to something for decades sometimes in some of our neighborhoods. Sometimes these changes are necessary again, with the sidewalks. And other changes. We're all creatures of habit. We like things the way they are. But sometimes it's just necessary to get things, again, the infrastructure, sidewalks, and the use. And yes, people will use sidewalks. They should. technically more than they should use the streets. And so, as far as that goes, I can see, again, I see the advantage of it. But then there was one question, I don't remember if it was answered, so I do have this one here. The roadway width, we talked about the width, but parking on one side, is there a certain width that we have as far as that, okay, is it an ordinance or a code of some sort where if it's a certain width, then we can go down to one side parking and not have it on both sides? I guess I need an answer for that question. So in case that question was asked earlier, can that be done later? Can later on, we make it one parking on one side?
The engineering design standards has a width, and if it's less than, I think it's less than 34, like 33.9 or something like that, then it could be marked as one side parking.
Okay, thank you. And so on that, are we going down to 34? Is that what was mentioned, I believe, earlier, or?
Yes.
So right, and should be just above that to where, can we make it one side if we did deem necessary? Do we have that authority, or does it have to be under that 33.9 or whatever?
I think we have the authority to do that by ordinance.
City Manager Mack, I think, has something to say.
Mayor, I would just like to comment. So I appreciate all the questions. We need to provide more detailed information to the council. There's engineering design standards, which are adopted in ordinance, which would dictate street width, sidewalk width, slope, all of those things, not just for new construction, but for infill. If you all are amenable to it, I think it may be good to defer this so that we can properly answer your questions so you can make an informed decision.
Councilman Shetty, the floor is still yours.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So right now we're talking about just if we're going to do the cost share. That's what this decision is tonight. Again, a lot of these questions are about if we should do sidewalks or not do sidewalks. So technically, it doesn't really pertain to the cost share. However, personally, I can't vote for yes for doing this cost share tonight if I still got questions on, again, all these challenges with different neighborhoods. So I guess theoretically, this a second conversation maybe after, we'll have public hearing, of course, but to be able to get some of these questions answered and then talk about it more as a public again, maybe will help this, for me personally, to determine, maybe we go to one side versus two. So I am for sidewalks. I am for cost sharing because we're being consistent. We want to make neighborhoods better in these areas. However, I just don't see it tonight yet as where we're at with all the information given.
Councilman Jurgens, and I will say Councilman Shetty made a motion but he did not make a motion. He suggested that possibly we push this back. City Manager Mack has also said so. I have not heard a motion. I am not going to prompt one. However, if someone on the council wanted to make one, I don't feel that would be inappropriate. I feel, and I would explain that later simply because if you're going to force me to vote on this now, the vote is going to be no. Councilman Jurgens?
Can I call the question then?
You can call the question.
Questions on the motion on the floor, right?
Yeah. So, all right.
Vote on calling the question.
Any opposition to calling the question? That forces us right to a vote.
That was my question.
Okay.
How does the procedure work?
Is there a second for calling the question? Second. All those in favor of calling the question, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Nay. Chair is in doubt. Let's call the roll. The motion is to call the question.
Okay. Helene?
Aye.
Jurgens?
Aye.
Peters?
Aye.
Chetty?
Aye.
Tupper?
No.
Bueller? Danforth?
No.
The motion carries. To call it, yeah.
Mayor, I think there was a little bit of confusion.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
I think so, yes.
You know what? I will say I made a mistake. We did not, if there is the desire to wait to push this back, which there was, yeah, but the question is called unless Councilman Jurens wants to take that back, but, yeah. Yeah. Actually,
I'm ready to
no,
vote.
it goes straight to the vote.
Oh, it does go straight to the
Yeah.
vote.
So for clarity, go ahead.
Yep.
We can bring it back,
You-
discussion.
Yes.
Which would then, I mean, immediately.
Yes,
And then consider a
yes. So, okay,
Different.
here's the deal. If you want to, okay, the question was called, goes straight to a vote. There is no debate upon that, so we're going to vote on it. If you do want to reconsider it to make a substitute motion, you would have to vote in the presiding, on the side that wins, and then you would have to immediately make that motion. And then we could take it up right away if that was the desire. So, what would happen to be is you'd have to reconsider, it would have to be taken up at the exact same meeting, but at the exact same meeting, the motion can be made to reconsider for a date determinate. So if you, let's just put it this way. If you don't want to vote on this tonight, if you want more information, if you want a second crack at this, vote in the affirmative side, immediately make a motion to reconsider. We will immediately go back to debate. And then if the desire of the council is to push this back for 2 weeks or till the next council meeting or to any date determinate, then we would make that motion at that time and then vote on that.
Mayor, can I ask one
Councilman
question
Tupper?
that may determine that? City engineer, Mr. Peterson, if we put this off for another month, what do you feel that's going to do to the bidding environment?
Well, I would think, how would that work?
Yeah.
I would think we'd still bid it as is.
We
So,
just wouldn't accept the bids?
well,
Right, we have
yeah.
30 days to award a bid, and
Yeah.
bids are due back on February 28th unless we issue some kind of amendment.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, that answers my
I
question.
try to provide leniency, but the procedure is clear. The question was called. We have to go into a vote. If you are, okay, so,
Can you please clarify what we're voting on?
okay. So the motion is to approve the resolution. So if you want essentially, if you want sidewalks there, you're going to vote yes. If you don't want sidewalks there, you're going to vote no. If you want to find out more answers and debate this at a time in the future, you would vote on the presiding side, or the side that wins, and you would immediately make a motion to reconsider. I will immediately go back to debate upon this, and then you can make a separate motion. Okay? I just want to make that clear, because I believe that there's a few council people who might make a substitute motion, or make an alternate motion at that time. So, but with that said, if you are in favor of a sidewalk there, a sidewalk assessment there, you're going to vote yes. If you're against it, you're going to vote no. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Helene,
No.
Jurens,
No.
Peters,
Nay.
Shetty,
Nope.
Tupper,
Yes.
Bueller. No. Danforth.
No.
Okay.
Motion fails. Would anyone like to make a motion to reconsider? All right, hearing none, motion fails. All right, we are going back to, I will give you 5 minutes. I assume that you guys aren't all that terribly interested upon changing other zoning areas in Watertown. So if you want to get up and leave, you sure can.
We should just take it out of the ordinance, just take it out.
Yep.
Get rid of it.
first reading of an ordinance number 24-01, amending the zoning map of the city of Watertown for a portion of Outlot X, Block 8 of Valley View, 4th edition, from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Single Family Attached Residential District. We'll go to City Manager Mack or Community
bet.
Development Manager?
I can tee it up, and our community development manager can provide details. This item was recommended for approval by the Plan Commission at their February 8th meeting on a vote of 7-0, excuse me. The plat of Valley View 4th was platted in October of 2021, after the lots adjacent to Cayley Court were rezoned to R2 Single Family Attached Residential District on October 15th of 2021. The rezone is appropriate for transitional zoning within a residential district and is the second phase to the interior of Cayley Court. The lots being rezoned will also be subsequently platted with a development agreement brought forward outlining the infrastructure improvement requirements for the next phase of the Valley View development. This plat will be known as Valley View 5th Edition and is attached to the agenda. I will turn it over to Community Development Manager Hanton to answer any questions you all might have.
And so will I. Manager Hanton, do you have anything to add?
So actually, Manager Mack teed it up well. She had the summary that we had put out there with the agenda. So that was all the details, really. This is the Valley View subdivision. So this is just the north side of the R2 area that we rezoned in 2021 within that Cayley Court area. And all of the lots that they are proposing in the plat that will come at the next council meeting will have all the lot sizes will be conforming to the R2 Single Family Attached Residential District.
All right, this is just a first reading, so we're just here for conversation. Is there anyone who, I don't have to open up public hearing, but is there anyone who would like to talk on this? All right, council, questions, comments? Anything? All right, moving on. Item 10B, first reading of an ordinance establishing the zoning designation of R1C Compact Family Residential District for the property to be known as Prairie Haven Annexation First Edition. City Manager Mack.
Mayor, I'll just defer directly to our Community Development Manager.
Manager Hanton.
All right, thank you, Manager Mack and Mayor. This is an annexation and zoning request, and as stated, it is proposed to be R1C, which is Single Family Compact Residential District. This is the Prairie Haven subdivision that we have annexed and zoned. The first phase of this residential subdivision, it has the approved concept plan, and then this portion is just, they're bringing it in, and then they will plat it to conform to that concept plan, and then also meet all of the regulations, ordinance requirements for the R1C district. With that, I'll stand by for any questions. Let me just note that it is 34.97 acres that they will be bringing in when they come with their next phase of the plat. It will not include all of this area, but it will include a portion of it. But this is all in line with, they will have to meet the sewer water consent decree terms, and that is why we go to we try to make it the maximum of 35 acres with what that decree entails. With that, I'll stand by for questions.
This is a first reading. I will open it up if anyone would like to speak on this. All right. Council, questions, comments? All right. Easy peasy. Item C, first reading of an ordinance 24-03, amending the zoning map of the city of Watertown, South Dakota for lots 15 to 18, block 7 of Davlin's addition from I-1 Light Industrial District to C3 Highway Commercial District. City Manager Mack.
Again, Mayor, I'll defer to our Community Development Manager.
Manager Hanton.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Manager Mack. This is another rezone request for the property shown here on the vicinity map in your agenda packet, but then also on the screen. This is located just south of 10th Avenue or Jensen, whichever, and south of Studio 212 for vicinity. This property it exists as I-1 Light Industrial District, and the proposal is to rezone it to C3 Highway Commercial District, which you can see it is adjacent to the C3 property to the north. And also in our comprehensive land use plan, it does show this area as being redeveloped with the mixed use of commercial and industrial zoning. And so this is just kind of the part of transitional zoning. As you can see, it is surrounded by I-1 Light Industrial District properties, but as properties are redeveloped and repurposed, this is the start of the transition that will eventually, you will see more abutting properties be C3 as well, in theory. So with that, I'll stand by for questions.
Okay, on this one, I think there might be someone who wants to speak. You don't have to.
Mayor, if you don't mind too, if I can add, this was recommended by Plan Commission 6-1. So there was one in opposition.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Brian Brandwright. Yeah, well, basically, a lot of these that are in the I-1 currently, I think the one to the far right on the screen there is, that's a church, I believe. Lindner Music would be next to that. You go down to the far end where the Social Security building would be, that's all in that same I-1. Is that correct, Brandy? Yep. So it's really not anything out of it's not a big stretch to pull this out, I don't feel. Brandy said they're trying to change a lot of these along that strip anyway. So wait to hear what you think.
Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a quick question for you, Ms. Hanton, as far as what, just to refresh my memory on, or C3 versus I-1 versus C3. That's my first question. What it pertains to, what it can allow.
Yep. So thank you, Councilman Shetty. So I-1 is, as it's stated, light industrial, so more of your manufacturing and industrial type uses, where then C3 is the highway commercial. So that's where it caters more to retail establishments and customer traffic.
Okay. Follow-up question then. So would that building with the Social Security, isn't that more of a C3 type of building then? Even though it's in the I-1, it's technically already a C3 building that's just happens to be in the purple?
Yes.
Just to make it simple, what we're looking at here.
Yes. So it exists as like a legal non-conforming building where even the uses are C3. They fit in that district much more than the I-1. So that would be something that we could contemplate, as we discussed with Plan Commission, of converting those to C3, but it's just something, so Plan Commission has to initiate it, such a rezone request when it's not applicant driven, but it's just not always a high priority, where once a property wants to redevelop or they're in need of a building permit, that's when we can bring these properties into conformance.
Another follow-up, thank you for that. So if you go down the road, down the street there, you're gonna have the furniture store and their the Sinclair Marketplace thing, that they, again, have added more C3 type of additions there. And then that's on the same stretch of road, just on the other side there. So you can see already some development going that direction. So I guess I can see the fit. I just want to get some clarity for my own self on this, so thank you.
Councilman Tupper.
Being at the Plan Commission meeting that day, Board of Adjustments meeting, I believe, and Ms. Hatton can correct me if I'm wrong, probably all but one building on that side of the road is running as commercial, illegal, non-conforming on the south side of the road there. I mean, if you went all the way from 81 over to, probably the only one that's running in an industrial would be Rowan Steel Construction, just to the east of of the property that Brian's talking about.
That's correct. And yeah, I'm glad that you clarified, because I think the first time you said that they were all, well, that they were all industrial
No, I said C3. They're all, well, they're industrial zoned, but they're operating under a more of a C3 type.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep, you're correct.
Just never anything's ever been changed as that's been redeveloped over the years. So I don't even think the one just directly to the west of you would be more of a C3, I believe. But it's probably zone industrial also.
Any further questions or comments? All right, hearing none, unless anyone on the council objects, I'm going to take a little leeway here on my own, and simply because I know that we have some people who have waited a long time to discuss the Junior League hockey team's lease. And I just don't know how long the medical marijuana fees are going to go on, so I just want to be respectful. So unless anyone has a problem, I'm going to go on to council approval. Item 12B, council approval of a lease agreement associated with the Junior League hockey team's use of the Prairie Lakes Ice Arena. City Manager Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have in front of you is the lease with a future junior team. You will notice that names have been redacted in order for the team to remain in compliance with the NAHL requirements until they've been fully approved. They cannot publicly comment, and we are not at liberty to share who the team is and who the owners are. I actually am going to, at this point, turn it over to City Attorney Carrico to walk through the details of the lease with you, but I will stand by for any questions that you might have.
City Attorney Carrico?
I had emailed some stuff to IT at the last minute, so I couldn't remember if this was one of them. So, council, as you know, we've had discussions during executive session about some of the substantive terms of the lease. After we've consulted with staff, we've consulted with our consultant. We've gone back and forth and have gone through several drafts. And so now we are at the finish line. Apart from what was previously sent to you and/or provided during our executive sessions, there was a couple of polishing up of just some language to provide more clarity. And in addition to, at the 11th hour is what I'll call it, inadvertently had omitted some requirements of the junior team that arose out of our sports medicine provider agreement with Prairie Lakes. And that had to do more with just some guaranteed advertising and that they were allowed to do, the Prairie Lakes, at the ice arena for their orthopedic and rehabilitation staff, as well as some just some media stuff that needed to occur. We included that in the lease, and we did print that off for you guys, and that is in highlighted in yellow on the drafts that we provided you today. But basically, it would be a 5-year lease. I guess I would stand by for any questions because a lot of it was already discussed and vetted quite thoroughly. So if you do have a specific question, I'm here for you.
Thank you very much. I don't need to do this, but I know that there are some people who have waited a long time to say something on this item. So is there anyone here who would like to say something on this item?
Who are you?
So I behave?
I'm just thinking, so I can't see it, so I want to be able to see it.
Gotcha.
Okay, you go.
So I'm Todd Randall, the president of the Watertown Hockey Association. I'm here representing the Watertown Laker Youth Hockey Association to give our support to a lease agreement with the junior hockey team. This opportunity will provide not only an economic impact, but more so a quality of life impact in our community. We have a vision of how the influence of a junior hockey team can help us grow our program and take it to the next level. While WHA supports this agreement, we also have the expectation and confidence that both the city of Watertown and the ownership of the new junior team will keep in mind the best interest of all parties, so this opportunity makes a positive impact for all involved and our community. We are well aware of some of the obstacles the junior team can create with scheduling and other aspects of operating our association, but we believe the pros far outweigh the cons and are very excited to support and work with the junior team. We thank the Watertown community. Want me to read it over?
No.
Okay, good. We thank the Watertown community and all the donors and supporters that have made all this possible. We are looking forward to the start of a new legacy for the sport of hockey in Watertown.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Randall. Anyone else out in the audience want to say anything? All right. Council, I need a motion to approve the lease agreement. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Let's open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Danforth.
Question, some time ago, in a communication with the prospective owner, I believe that the owner group had asked for some type of confirmation on a lease that would ultimately then be communicated to the NAHL for their use and consideration of awarding a team. Is that correct?
Correct. So this is basically what we're trying to do here, is approve a draft lease that they could present to the NAHL as something that is approved. And then basically it would not get signed unless the potential team or, membership group was actually granted membership by the NAHL, then we would be executing the lease. But they will need to provide this as part of their application.
Well, I'm going to tell you, and I shared a concern with Ms. Mack and the mayor and yourself that I have here. And it's not with the lease itself. It's the way this is being processed. We're being asked to approve something that the NAHL wants in order for them to make a decision, and we have not enabled the public to see this information. And that really doesn't sit well with me from a transparency standpoint. I struggle with that. I'm for the lease. I just don't like the fact that I've got a copy of it here and the public doesn't. And they haven't had. And they won't have. You're our attorney. I struggle with that, so that, because if we're going to approve it tonight.
Sure.
So if anybody in the public, for whatever reason, has a concern with this, it's just too late, isn't it?
I would akin this to when you guys approved the naming rights agreement for Prairie Lakes that was held back until it could be publicly announced. It's my understanding that that's how that one occurred, so I would put it akin to that. Also, we do have it on the screen now, which is a public forum, and people, for the viewing audience, could see it, although we weren't able to post it at the agenda time because it wasn't in its final draft form. Those are the only two
Well, I'm just sharing
concessions
I want my concern to go on record. I'm going to vote for it, but I feel bad that the public doesn't have any type of say in this. They really don't. No.
And I'd like to second Councilman Danforth's concern. It's not that I have a problem with the lease, and I understand that it wasn't, I'm not blaming anyone in the city. I mean, I understand this is the first time we've ever done anything, and there's the NAHL rules to consider, and there's confidentiality. There's a whole lot that goes into this, but it's, I have some heartburn on that as well. Councilman Tupper?
It's not untypical for leases like this to be kept per se under the table until it's time for somebody to allow us to release it to public, correct?
Right, I mean, there are situations, maybe not with a lease per se, but with certain contracts where there's a confidentiality clause until such time that the parties are ready to execute, at which time it could be revealed. Now, remember too, that in all likelihood, this is the lease that should be agreed and approved upon at the time of, you are asking and approving for the city manager to execute if it gets approved and they become a member. But in all reality, you could decide later and post it again later for public comment, I suppose, and try to change it. I don't know that it gets us anywhere. Prolongs the agony.
Follow up, Councilman?
I have to agree with the mayor and Councilman Danforth, but it is being made to the public right now, correct? So anybody could go on the city's website and find this?
It is not attached to the agenda yet.
No, but it will be.
It will be after action is taken. You'll recall with the Prairie Lakes naming rights agreement, it did not get attached to the agenda until after council had approved it.
Yeah,
And it was not
that's-
shown on the screen either, because we met out at the site.
That was what I'm getting at, is we did it once already on this project with the naming rights. So it's not abnormal, but I do agree with both these gentlemen, so.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. With all due respect to my fellow council people, I think we've approved many leases and agreements in the past without public knowledge. I think we've done that, and I think we're elected to make these decisions. That's my viewpoint on that.
Any further questions or comments? Councilman Shetty?
Just a quick comment on this. Mr. Randall and his comments, after sitting here for 3 hours, just wondering if the needles moved for him running.
Any further questions or comments? All right, hearing none, the motion is to approve the lease agreement. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll. Councilman Tupper?
Okay. Helene,
Aye.
Jurens,
Aye.
Peters,
Aye.
Shetty,
Aye.
Tupper,
Aye.
Bueller, Danforth.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Item 12A, an approval of Resolution 24.07, establishing the licensing fees for medical marijuana manufacturing and cultivation. City Manager Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have in front of you is a result of the work session a week ago related to medical marijuana manufacturing, cultivation, and we will be adding testing, as that was part of the discussion, application and renewal fees. As per the discussion last week, the recommendation is to lower all of the application fees for those 3 licenses to $5,000 and lower the renewal fees for those 3 licenses to $2,500. I would stand by for any questions.
Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution. Finance Officer Bob Zine, do you have a question upon?
Yeah, just because we will be changing the wording of the resolution.
Oh,
If we
okay, so
could
you
make
need
sure
it.
the motion states that for the testing fee.
So I will change the motion to approval of a resolution number 24.07, establishing the licensing fees for medical marijuana manufacturing and cultivation and testing. Is that it? Okay, that is going to be the motion. Do I have a motion? Motion made by Councilman Peters. Seconded by Councilman Tupper. Let's open it up for council questions and comments. Councilman Danforth.
Yeah, Mayor and my fellow council members, I apologize. I was out of town when you guys had your work session, so I have not had the opportunity to talk to anybody really to any extent about that. But when it comes to that, first of all, I agree in lowering the fee. I think where we were at X number of months or years ago, we didn't really know where we were at on some of the stuff when we set the original fees. But the struggle I have really isn't that we're going from where we are down to $2,500 a year, because I got to ask myself, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm going to ask this question first. Do we have a policy or a guideline as to why we set fees and how we set them? Why do we have fees in this case? There's got to be a reason. So is it a reason to cover our costs? Is it a reason to what? I understand if you know, that we have fees to take your stuff to the dump ground, okay, as an example. We have fees for a lot of different things, little licenses or permits, be a welder or a sign installer, and they're $75. What is it on this that drives this to be a $2,500 annual fee versus a pipe fitter?
Thank you very much, and I will open it up for City Manager Mack or City Attorney Carrico. I know Councilman Beeler did ask that question, but, or Finance Officer Bob Zine?
Go ahead. You might have a better answer than I do.
So as far as a lot of the fees, as you mentioned, Councilman Danforth, they're kept pretty low. They're minimal time and effort to process as far as the licensing. I know for the alcohol, the state does cap what we can charge, and we are charging the max of what we can on the alcohol. So that's the malt beverage and the liquor. So that is kind of capped by the state. The state has not done that with these, as far as medical marijuana, any of these licenses. They kind of let the cities kind of figure it out on their own. And I think that in turn is why you're kind of seeing it all over the board for many different municipalities. So for this one, I can't answer. I would say for the rest of our fees, we do look at them annually and adjust based off of time it takes for staff, research. But that's about all I can kind of give you. Thank you.
And Ms. Bobzine, that would be my understanding historically, is that there's processing fee, we try to get our cover our costs, et cetera. You know, once an initial applicant, in my opinion, gets through, I can see a first year thing, an initial application thing to be higher. But I really question how much effort and time we have to put into it after that. If I may, I got another question. We have a very nice little company here in town that produces alcohol for human consumption, and they sell that. Do they pay an annualized fee to do that? They don't, do they? So my question is how does this differ from that? They're producing, they're taking product, making it into something that ultimately is going to be sold out into. They aren't selling it direct, so they're selling it into the wholesale retail market to be resold. How does that differ from what we're requiring of somebody that's going to grow a product, somebody else that might produce the product, which is equivalent to their alcohol? They don't pay a license or an annualized fee. These people do.
So the only reason that these are before us is part of them getting the license requirements with the state is that they also have to be licensed with the municipality. As we discussed, whatever that fee ends up being based off a council decision, they would still have to go through a licensing process because the state is the one that's regulating that, whereas they're not requiring that with like a distillery.
Okay.
So,
but my point is once they're approved, we're saying every year after that it's $2,500.
that's correct
Correct.
right now. Yep.
Honestly, and that's where I'm having some difficulty. I'm going to vote for this because if I don't, we're going to leave it high. But I struggle with the idea that, you know, our ethanol plant that we have here, they process materials and they create a product and they don't pay a fee. The liquor producer here, they don't pay a fee. And I just wonder, you know, and is it an overreach on our part just to say because we can, we do? And I'm just saying, I struggle with that without truly having a basis and an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing. I get it on the other one, $75 for this or $100 for that. I get that. It doesn't take much for us to have that tied up in just processing of that stuff annually. I don't, you know, it's hard for me to justify the difference between $100 and $2,500. But anyway, food for thought.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree, Mike. I thought about it pretty much the same analogy. It was, you know, you make alcohol, you make whiskey, you're not charging the corn growers, you're not, you know, those kind of things. You're just not those ancillary things that support that. You're not charging for that. And I do want to, I want to mention, the proposal I made when we had our work session, and I was the only proposal, was $2,500 for the first year and $1,000 for the renewals. And I think somehow or another it got changed to $2,500. And I don't know if that's necessary either. And I agree. What do we need that money for? Why do we need to do that? I have that same question.
City Manager Mack, do you want to say something?
Ooh.
Councilman Jurens.
I was on the same page as Bruce the other night in the work session. Councilman Bueller.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we got you covered, Councilman Bueller. You know, we've established right now that we don't charge a distillery, we don't charge multiple other places. We don't charge any manufacturer to make a widget in Watertown, South Dakota. And why are we gonna charge this group to make a widget? It's we come back to a little philosophy is how much does the government need to be involved? Or do they need to be involved a lot? And it's just a form of taxation is how I see it. It's, you can call it a processing fee, you can call it a license fee. It's just a taxation, and in those realms, I say no to processing fees. I would side with Councilman Bueller on the, I too believe 2,500. I don't know where we're coming up with that, but I believe if we want to establish a place for employment and for economic development, that we at least get it down to the 2,500 upfront and 1,000 renewal.
Councilman Tupper.
Just to kind of clarify, when you're using that for an example from a distiller, you know, that's somebody that makes alcohol or beer, they pay a larger amount of taxes. A whiskey or gin distiller or whatever pays a federal tax on top of that. And anybody that makes beer pays a pretty good chunk of sales tax to the state to produce that. So it's not really a fair comparison because they're some of that's regulated under federal law and they pay federal taxes on that.
Councilman Peters.
We have I think we've beat this thing to death. I mean, the last, however long. And I think it goes back to the fact that we have no matrix. Yep. We have no matrix that says, this is what we should be charging. I mean, we're throwing out ideas and seeing what sticks. And I have yet to look back, and I don't remember who said it over there, but it was, how should we know what to charge? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody does. I don't know if it has any impact on public safety that's saying this is what it's costing us on this side, so this is what we need to, have a fee in place for or whatever. I just, at this moment, I don't see any justification for, naming an amount and putting my finger on an amount. So I don't know how, other than taking Councilman Bueller's recommendation, I don't know how I can rebuttal with that.
Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. Here, Kyle. And it really was kind of pulled out of the air, and I thought it was a lot lower than folks were kind of looking at. And to Councilman Tupper's point, we still have $5,000 that the state's going to charge these different entities to do that. I don't recall, does anyone know what the renewal fees for testing and cultivation and manufacturing? So it's $5,000 a year on top of that. So I don't know how much more we need to add to that. Hey, if it's 1,000, but here's what I will say. I think it does get some skin in the game for the folks that are doing this, and it might keep some people that are doing these activities from popping in and out of this thing. And that way you've got people that are real, that are trying to make this happen and get it done. They're going to have a better idea of what the competition looks like. So it does put a little skin in the game, and I think it keeps people from ducking in and out of it.
Councilman Tupper?
I think that's part of what I probably brought up a little bit during our work session when we discussed this. It keeps a little integrity into the program. I mean, if we get it too low, then We got 20 of them out there and none of them survived. So, and we didn't do a whole lot for the economic development and we got a bunch of empty buildings. So these amounts are what came out of our work session as a recommendation, if everybody remembers. I'm fine if somebody wants to lower them a little bit, but that is what we spoke very lengthy on during our work session is these amounts, so.
Councilman Peters?
Yeah, I was just going to echo Councilman Tupper. This is what we, essentially decided to put on the agenda in the work session was the 5 and 25. But, I guess I would go back to what's stopping us coming back here in a year having the same discussion until we can get some kind of matrix that says this is what it should be. So I'm in favor of moving it to 2,500 and 1,000 if that's the consensus.
City Attorney Carrico, did you have a comment?
Actually, I believe Councilman Tupper and Councilman Peters kind of nailed it there. It was basically, this is what came out of the work session as what I'm going to call a working product that you guys had directed staff to do. And now you guys are having really good discussion about, is this the number we want or do we want it to be lower? I would just reiterate just different comments that council has made in the past with fees is easier to go down than up. The other thing to take into consideration, which again could be minimal, but just so that you don't come later and say, why didn't you ever say that, is obviously with the testing, manufacturing, and what's the third one that wasn't distribution, cultivation, was just that there were additional regulations in our ordinances related to that that would have to be monitored by code enforcement. Again, probably not a lot, but just stuff that, you guys should consider in weighing what you do want the fee to be. And I'm not saying that it stays at what it is. It's just when you're making a decision, I just like you to make an informed decision. So I thought I'd bring that up.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you. No, and I think we'd mentioned this before too in our work session that, zoning is definitely going to put limitations on the number of these folks that can do different things. So it's not like there's going to be hundreds of them all in our city limits. So, but yeah, I don't know, Mayor, can I make a motion at this point in time?
Yes.
Okay, I would make a motion that we, for cultivation, for testing, and for processing of marijuana, that we would put an upfront cost for license at $2,500 and renewal at $1,000 for the years beyond that.
Okay. So the substitute motion is essentially to lower the fees from $5,000 to $2,500 and then $2,500 to $1,000. That's for initial application and renewal. So that is the motion. Is there a second? Motion made by Councilman Beeler and seconded by Councilman Jurens. We are now discussing just the amendment, which is, so the amendment is the lowered fees. So $2,500 for the initial application, $1,000 for the renewal for all three licenses. That is what we are discussing. Any comments on that? Councilman Danforth?
I do have a question. Ms. Bobzine, Ms. Mack, do we have an understanding of what our costs are upfront on each applicant? I mean, because that to me is where we're at. I want to make sure that we aren't spending a gazillion hours on this and 2,500 ain't covering it. I'm more concerned. I mean, we've went from 25 to 5 down to what's now proposed at 2,500. Are we? Do you know? Are we covering our costs? Because that's really what we need to be doing.
I think any of those amounts would be fine to cover our costs.
Okay.
We regularly look at, for example, our building permit fees. We have those on an annual escalator. That could be the case here. If you want to lower them, we can look at, some sort of CPI adjustment for them as well. But whatever you decide to do as far as impact on staff, it's just staff time. And with the dispensary licenses are capped at 3, so we can kind of figure out what the cost to implement those are. There is no cap on the others, but the market will drive, how many of those facilities we end up having. And if it does come back that it's taking an inordinate amount of staff time, we can certainly provide that back to you.
Okay, because that's where Mayor, that's where my concern is, just to make darn sure that we're covering our costs. That should be at least our first line of setting, a policy, or in this case, a fee. So I'm good with what has been proposed.
Councilman Tupper?
Just for the fact that some of the discussion that was just spoken of, we don't know what we don't know. So I would like to make a substitute motion to be 25 and 25, because we can always bring that other one down in a year from now if we see fit that we're covering our costs. But like I say, we don't know what we don't know, and I'd feel more comfortable with that. So that would be my motion.
Just to be clear, so the substitute motion is to change the fees to $2,500 for initial application and $2,500 for renewals.
Correct.
Okay. That is the motion. It is a substitute motion. Is there a second on that? No, it's a substitute motion, so if this fails, then we go back to the original amendment, which is Councilman Bueller's.
Well, that's substitute one.
Well, that was an amendment upon the original motion. So this is a substitute
Should have been
motion.
in debate.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion? I actually will second it because I don't think that it's an unfair cost, but so we are now discussing the substitute motion, but we don't need to talk about it very long. I'm just saying, it's like, if the substitute motion is $2,500 for the initial application and the same amount for renewals, I don't want to take any, I just think it's a fair argument from Councilman Tupper that we can always, it's going to be a lot easier to lower it than raise it. That's my justification. Councilman Peters?
I would recommend that we can vote on this substitute motion, but I would recommend rejecting it and then moving forward with Councilman Bueller's motion and level setting, and then now treating these as the building permits are treated. And every year they're assessed and they're valued according to time spent. Because if we're level setting and we're going lower, then we can build upon that, gradually escalating, I think is the term that was used, versus setting them a little higher and then having the discussion again of lowering them. Let's just level set now. Let's get it right this time, and let's escalate it up accordingly. That's my recommendation.
I don't want to stifle debate, but unless someone is going to change their mind on this, Councilman Shetty?
I haven't spoke yet, so thank you. Does anyone understand why the state is at 5,000? Does anyone?
Councilman Peters?
They have to do, I believe, testing and things like that, and licensing themselves, don't they? I think that's my understanding.
Okay. The motion, it's a substitute motion, is to $2,500 for initial and renewal. All those in favor, please. We'll do a roll call. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Helene,
Aye.
Jurens,
Nay.
Peters,
Nay.
Shetty,
Aye.
Tupper,
Aye.
Bueller. Danforth,
Nay.
Motion fails. We are back to Councilman Bueller's initial amendment, which is 2,500 initial application, 1,000 renewal. Everyone clear on that? 2,500, 1,000. Any comments on that? Hearing none, let's go to a vote. All those in favor will say aye, opposed say nay. Call the roll.
Helene,
Aye.
Jurens,
Aye.
Peters,
Aye.
Shetty,
Nay.
Tupper,
Aye.
Bueller. Danforth,
Aye.
that motion carries.
Motion carries. All right, we are on to item 12C, acknowledgement of Prairie Lakes Ice Arena donors. Senior Manager Mack.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This is a fun one to end the evening on.
I hope someone's still watching.
Excited about that. I know that at least Steve Jurens is watching because he has been sharing some information with me. So what we have in front of you, I guess to a point of clarity, any item that was over $50,000 and had a request related to naming rights has been brought in front of you already for approval. Any contribution that was a contribution, just out of the kindness of their hearts, is on this list tonight simply for public acknowledgement of all of the public involvement that has gone into this building. To date, the total number raised, I have it written down, and now I can't.
How do you make
find
it?
In donations is $8,893,466. The scoreboard sponsorships total $349,500. So there's, the only action to take is just simply acknowledging all of this really, really great community support.
City Attorney Carrico?
Yeah, and obviously, all donations are important and appreciated. I just wanted to give a little bit of highlights, which was, where is it at? As you know, the Watertown Lakers Hockey Association, they really went out and did a lot of fundraising, and so they have already contributed $116,000. Obviously, all our corporate sponsors, we were, very pleased. And then we had just individual families that were, donating. Just so council kind of understands the vernacular here. The scoreboard super anchors and the scoreboard shrouds. So the scoreboard shrouds are the corners of the center hung scoreboard. The super anchors are, I think, along the bottom of that same center hung. They were different donation packages. There's also Anchor Partner. Also, the Figure Skating Club also went out and obviously raised some funds and are contributing $41,000. Again, this was all over $25,000. We also had, just for additional information, so at the time of the project, when it was bid out, there were several contractors that as part of their bid actually gave an in-kind donation of their services. And so that is here as well as other in-kind donors. So Montgomery's obviously has donated furniture for that fireplace area. Then we have several contractors that were part of the overall construction, some subcontractors that provided. Thompson Mechanical is actually, if you see in the notes, they're doing preventative maintenance on the refrigeration equipment and the HVAC system for the next 2 years. That includes product as well of filters and that sort of thing to keep it up to snuff. And so they have also provided that in-kind contribution. And then Ledgers, of course, also provided an in-kind just in the housekeeping and accounting of the Build It Now campaign. I would also like to add that, so in talking with finance, just so you guys know, council, for those sponsors that did sign pledge forms, they will continue to pay their pledges to Build It Now. And then as the city needs funds, Build It Now will then transfer the money over to the finance office. Then those, like we said, which we had tonight, were two of our bigger donors, our $1 million donors. They had not signed so-called pledge forms with Build It Now, plus they were doing some naming. So those were in agreements that were entered by you all, and those payments will come directly to the city over time. And actually, from the get-go, we had some 20-year payment plans, but now we're down to, I think the longest one is 15. So that was very nice. And then obviously, as we discussed before, Watertown Ford did the Zamboni and now doing the second rink. So yeah, it's going to be great. Or as I've said before, it's going to be slick. So it's going to be slick inside.
I still want to drive it.
Pun unavoidable. If this were at the beginning of the meeting, I might be able to read this, but not
I don't know how to make it bigger. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Anyway, I'm sure we can go out and look at the donor wall.
Mayor,
City Councilman Bueller.
thank you. A comment. Lisa, thanks for all your good work.
Sure.
Of
Thank you.
getting all this done and showing us the representation's really good. Thank you.
I try.
Councilman Tupper.
I would like to thank the whole community of Watertown. I tell you what, this thing's long time coming. I've never seen a community, well, and we've had professionals that have told us this, that have stood up to, really stepped up to the plate and got behind this like the city of Watertown has. Who was it that, Dick Strasberg, wasn't it, that said he's been doing this for how many years and he's never seen such a thing? That says a lot for our community, and I don't care if it's a $1 million donation or a $250 donation. They're all very, very important. They all gave what they could, and we wouldn't see this if it wasn't for them. So my hat's off to the whole community, everybody that got behind this, and maybe some didn't even give anything, but their enthusiasm and everything that's been behind this whole project for the last 3 years or whatever. Hats off to the city of Watertown. They deserve a facility like this. So.
Can you see it now?
Any further comments? Yes, I can see it now. And I'd like to say, I know that it's late and I know we're ready to go, but I will just ask for a little leniency here because this has been it's been 4 years that the council has been working on this directly. And I want to thank everyone that has been on board from the very beginning. I think the only one that was on it from the very beginning with me is Councilman Bueller, because we've had turnover in the councils. But that was just the very beginning. But we would not have been here without the help of everyone in the community to raise the money, the donors who have given what they could. One of my favorite stories is a young man, I think he's a very young teenager, Connor Dahl, wanted to give money, and his mother and father offered to pay it for him, and he goes, no. So he actually broke open his piggy bank and raised $500 of his own money because he wanted his name on the wall so that when he comes back to Watertown, or if he still lives here in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, he can see his name on the wall. And that was an example of just someone, who just really wanted this. But there's a lot of adults who broke open the piggy bank too to give what they could, and it's just very much appreciated. And it's and it's just one of the reasons why this is a great place to live, and this is Dick Strasberg said this is the most giving community he has ever worked with, and I really do believe that's true, and it's a testament. I will also say that I want to give a hats off to all the city staff. My right-hand partner here, City Manager Mack, City Attorney Carrico, Finance Officer Bob Zine have put in countless hours getting us to the finish line. Because even when the construction was largely done, and I won't say on autopilot, but out of our hands, there was still so much, like this work that you're seeing, finalizing these donations, are dozens and dozens and dozens of hours. And also, just the staff that worked with RJM on a weekly basis. Heath Von I was leading that, but we also have all of our engineering department. These are weekly calls. I was in on some of those, but that's only a portion of what the work was being done, constantly in contact. So to get us across that finish line, this took a community. This is the largest project in Watertown history, and it took a lot of effort to get us there. So I want to say thank you to everyone. We've all been a part of it, because also, and I want to say council, we would not be here without council's approval, because we had to take a couple leaps of faith as well in regard to money and belief in this community. So let's hope it pays off. City Manager Mack, did you want to say anything?
No, just I think you might want to make a motion to acknowledge,
Yep.
perhaps?
Oh, sorry, yeah, and I allowed comments, but Chair will entertain a motion to acknowledge the donors.
I will.
Made by
Motion.
Councilman Tupper,
Second.
seconded by Councilman Jurens. All right, I've taken comments. If anyone wanted to say anything, they sure can.
I will.
Councilman Jurens.
This seems like the finish line, but it's actually just beginning with sponsorships of, after the vote tonight, I think it's getting really, really close that we'll have a junior team. There's season tickets, there's there's jersey purchases, there's tons of things and opportunities for those that have not been a part of this, that feel compelled. This really, really the support and the way it's going to work out And the way it's going to work out for your city and for the hockey and for all involved is the support from here on out.
All right. Any further comments? Hearing none. Motion is to acknowledge the donors. I'm just going to call for a big loud yell. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Yes. Any opposed, say nay. You better not. All right, motion carries. All right, we're in for city council member announcements and introduction of topics for future discussion. I'm going to take mayor's privilege and cede my time. I apologize, I wanted to do this when he was here. I called him back. Todd Randall, the president of the Watertown Hockey Association, has an announcement for this weekend's games. And I want him to get the credit because it was his decision to do this for the community.
Sounds good, yes. Well, we've been working really hard and taking advantage of all the learning on the scoreboard and all the sound system things to make the great atmosphere for the weekend. Well, on one hand, it'd be nice as a nonprofit group to take advantage of a weekend of, a large crowd and good revenue for admissions. We decided this weekend that we're going to have free admission for all the community to come out and see the games in the arena. That's just our way of saying thank you to everybody, and we want to fill that rink. There's probably a lot of people out there like Randy Tupper that probably don't know the difference between a clothesline and a blue line. But we want those people at the game too. So sorry there, Randy, I had to put a plug at you.
Can I just say real quick?
Yep.
Fuck you.
That's with a P, not another one. So, but anyways, we got a special spot for Randy out there too. We'll maybe see. We'll sit on the Zamboni maybe.
So, and Mr. Randall, I want to say thank you because it was very much in your rights to charge money to get into the game this weekend, and it would have meant a big deal for the association. But I would like to thank you because I think it's an even bigger deal to show that you are a member of the community and you want the communities to succeed and the ice too. And you know that there's a ton of people who want to come out and see it. Councilman Beeler?
Yes, thanks. Todd, maybe you'd want to mention the times and the dates.
Yeah, so Friday night we play Mitchell at 6 o'clock is the JV and 8 o'clock is the varsity. So we're planning some special between periods things to do some thank yous and acknowledgements, things like that. Some pregame fun things. We're going to amp it up a little bit to make the fan experience the best we absolutely can. And then Saturday night, they're a little bit earlier. I think 2 and 4 o'clock. I better double check on them, but I believe it's 2 and 4 o'clock. We've actually, you may have seen it on our Facebook page already, or we did contact both the radio stations, and we even put a call out to KELOLAND and Dakota News Now and asked them if they come up and cover our first games for us. And just a little bit to share our experience with the council and all of the donors has been a lot of fun. Hockey is a small world, and as we travel throughout the state, we have kids play on summer teams, and we know a lot of people. And to hear people from around the state coming to us and so excited to come here and play, it's been really neat. And another one too that's pretty cool. Just we've had a handful of our kids that have came out there. When we moved in the other day, we had some kids that were helping, and to see the look on those young athletes' faces when they walk in, I wish you all could see that because it's pretty special. So,
Mayor, one more.
Councilman Beeler?
Yeah, I don't know, and maybe we've already done this, but I would assume we've done some media releases to the television stations and try to promote this as best we can through all the media outlets, I hope.
Yeah, Dakota News Now did a nice story. That was pretty nice. So.
And then I think it's a different TV station tomorrow. But yeah, we've already been on one. I do want to make one thing clear, just for the public. So Friday and Saturday, it's just the Laker hockey games. You will not get to tour the ice arena. If you come out thinking you're going to see every bit of the ice arena, it's not going to happen. That's going to be in April at the grand opening. I've been working with the big donors on that, coordinating that, scheduling that. We don't have a date set, but it's going to be sometime in April because we want to make sure that it's all clean and polished, and we've got tour guides to take people all around the ice arena because we want to show what it is, show why we made the decisions that we did, and also to make sure that there's no, vandalism or people just running around causing a problem. So this weekend, if you're coming out, you're just going to watch a hockey game. It's still going to be fantastic, but you're not going to be able to see the entire arena, and I don't want people to have false expectations. I will also say that I know the WHA has sent out a call for volunteers. I think that we could still use a few more volunteers. Our Parks and Recreation staff are doing a fantastic job, but this is going to be their first run, and they're doing it without a net. This is not a what is it when a restaurant does a soft opening?
yeah.
This is not a soft opening for the Parks and Recreation Department, so they're going to be thrown into the fire. We could use a few volunteers. If you are so inclined, contact Mr. Randall, myself. Scott Glow is the head of our ice arena. So anyway, if you are so inclined, we would love the help on Friday and Saturday. Any further comments? Thank you, Todd, for coming back and making that announcement.
No problem. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Todd.
All right. Any further announcements?
I got one, Mayor.
Councilman Tupper.
Coming out of the last Board of Adjustments Plan Commission meeting, there's been some discussion on how, I'm glad you're here, Dusty, so you'll get a wind of this, on how we decide park dedication land and dollars in lieu. So I think they would like us to look at that again and make sure that our recommendations that we're sending them or the Park and Rec Board, that we're all still on the same board. You know, we keep growing a lot, and parks ain't growing a lot. You know, and I didn't want to pick on Mr. Riefenberger earlier while he was here, but, you know, their dedication to that park's going to be quite a few years down the road, and let's face it, I mean, that's growing pretty fast. So we need to really just look at our rules and regulations and make sure we're doing the right thing is also.
City Manager Mack.
Thanks, Councilman Tupper. I'll verify with our Park and Rec Director and with our Community Development Manager, but I think we did make some amendments to that when we updated the Park and Rec ordinance, when we changed the board. But we can send that back around.
Okay, thank you.
All right. City Manager, as long as you got the mic, you want to give her your report?
You bet. Well, I had on my list to announce the games, so come to the game Friday or Saturday. It's going to be great. I did email you all, but we have hired a public information officer. Kelly Fritz will start with us on March 1st. She comes to us from Harmony Hill and has quite an extensive background in marketing and communications. Excited for her to join our team. And I have been corresponding with you all about House Bill 1092, which is the 911 surcharge bill. It was defeated on the Senate floor a couple weeks ago, but it was reconsidered and will be reheard on Monday. It was defeated by 3 votes. I think they may be able to overcome that. So if so, that's great news, not just for Watertown, but all of the 911 providers across the state. And if you happen to see our 911 manager, Troy Van Dusen, whether it's approved or not, give him a special thanks for all of his efforts on that. That's all that I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. We have no reason to go into executive session, therefore the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Beeler. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good night.